Hello, Professor. I hope you're sitting down because this is about to blow your socks off. So to jump into it, the way that we implemented the treasures is that we set each treasure to a random dot choice from an empty cell array. We created points that were the treasure's coordinates to help with readability. Then we added the treasures to the grid represented by 2. Once they were added to the grid, we rendered them to the screen by calling a new function, drawTreasure, that has the same parameters as drawBarrier. It loops through the grid and looks for all positions with a 2, and draws a treasure at the location using displaySurf.blitz.
So that renders the treasures to the screen, and then we have to verify if the player ever collides with one of the treasures. So we do that in our isValidMove function. So we're already calling this every time the player moves, and before we actually just had this code right here, but now we're adding a little bit more code. So if the player, if the grid is a 2, we know that there is a treasure. So if there is a 2, then we're going to check if is overlapping of the player's position and the treasure's position. Type here is actually the type of a player that's colliding. So type 1 represents the player, and type 2, which we'll explain in a second, represents the enemy. So if the player is colliding with one of the treasures, then it's going to run this set of code here. So first, we'll actually get to the sound effects in just a moment, so I'll just skip that for now. But if the position of the grid is a 0, we're going to actually set the position to a 0. So if the player collides with the treasure, we want the treasure to disappear. So we just set it back to 0. And then we're going to increment the score by 1 right here. And then below, if the score modulus 3 is equal to 0, then we're going to reset the game. So if that just means if the score, if all of the treasures have been taken, that means that this is going to return true. And then we're going to run the reset game function, which we'll discuss in a moment. So one other thing is for the, so this is for the player collision with the treasure, and this right here is for the enemy collision with the player. So if it's type 2, this means that if it's the enemy and its position of the enemy is equal to the position of the player, then we're going to run this set of code here. So we're just going to reset the position of the player, position equals 0, 0. We're going to decrement the lives by 1. And if the lives is 0, then we're going to set it back to 3. We're going to reset the score to 0 and then call that same reset game function we called above here. So the reset game function is stated right here. Basically, we just, at the top, we just declare a bunch of global variables because we want to reset the variables that we instantiated at the, actually right below here, all this stuff. So in order to actually make changes to these variables, we need to declare them global up here. Once we declare all the global variables, I just copied all of the code that we had for our original function below, all this stuff. We just copied and pasted all that, and it works pretty well, and it just basically resets everything. This set of code here just loops through the array and verifies that the position of the enemy is not colliding with the position of a barrier. If it is, then it's going to set that barrier equal to 0, because there was an issue where the barriers were being set on top of the enemies, and then the enemies weren't moving. So this whole set of code just eliminates that problem. So now we're just going to talk about the lives and the score. So we just instantiate these 2 variables right here, so lives and treasures, and then we basically just increment and decrement those in the previous function right here and right here. And when the game resets, it just makes an entirely new grid, and that's about it. It actually doesn't do anything to the score or the lives or anything like that. So let's talk about the sound now. So we were able to get everything working, so we wanted to add a little bit more. So we did add a song which plays and resets, and we also just added a simple sound effect. So when the player collides with the treasure up here, it will play a sound right here. So it's going to be, oops, where is it? right here. So effect lab. Oh, wait, yeah. So it'll just play a sound here. Now we're going to show you the game working.
All right, Professor, get ready. Alright, so, as you see, SpongeBob is after the Krabby Patties before Plankton. And every time that you collect all the treasures, the board changes. Oh, jeez. But I'll show you what it looks like. And then that's what happens when you die.
Basically, the reason that it keeps resetting is because Plankton just keeps resetting your lives down to 0, then it resets the board. But yeah, as you can see, when you do run out of your lives, it resets the score back to 0.
Alright, well, I think you understand that this works, and we have a few bugs, but
definitely pretty fun.
Yeah, I
hope you like it.
Yeah, see? It's just... I don't know why, but this kind of makes me laugh. And if this happens at the beginning, it kind of syncs up with the music, and it looks like this is supposed to happen.
So we just mask our bugs as features. You know?
Yes. Thank you, Professor.
Have a great day.
Bye.